Good afternoon or good morning, again, depending on where you're residing in the country. This is Don Bowser, Rave Mobile Safety. I'd like to thank everyone for joining us today for this webinar, Community Engagement Best Practices in Orange County, VA, or Virginia. And I'm going to make the slide work, I promise. I'd like to introduce today's speaker. We're very fortunate to have Nicola Tidy making the presentation today. Nicola, or Nikki as she is known, is the Director of Orange County Emergency Communications Center. She has been in public safety for 18 years, starting as a volunteer firefighter EMT, and in 2004 joining the communications field. During her career, Nikki worked her way through the ranks, serving as CTO, supervisor, training coordinator, and now 911 director. In 2011, Nikki received the Governor's Award for Outstanding EMS Telecommunications Officer Dispatcher. Throughout her career, Nikki has been actively involved in Virginia APCO and the APCO International. At the international chapter level, Nikki served on the Communications Center Standards Committee, currently chairs the Occupational Analysis Subcommittee, and contributes to other workshops and committees. She served as chapter president in 2016. When not excelling at her job, you will find Nikki crossfitting or hanging out on her 11 acres with her family and 2 dogs. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Nikki.
Don, thank you, and thank you for all the people who have joined us today. So I'm very excited to actually be here and talk a little bit about Rave and how Orange County here in Virginia and how we use Rave. So to give you a little bit of background about Orange County and who we are and where we are 343 square miles. We have a population about 36,000. I do like to say, though, that we have more cows than people. So we are a rural community. Our major events that we have in Orange County is we have large horse shows, big horse races that actually just occurred. Skydiving, we actually have one of the best skydiving facilities on the East Coast here in Orange County. Lots of Civil War. In fact, if you go across to the church across the street from us was used during the Civil War as actually a hospital. So we're actually kind of infamous since we sit along the railroad lines of that. These events, though, as you can see, this is what spikes our population. So we're used to seeing more than about 36,000 people. I apologize, I'm starting to get some feedback and some echo, so I picked up the handset. So even over this weekend, we had our major horse racing event, and that definitely spiked our population. And this is where we're seeing tools such as Rave and the things that they can do starting to become a huge planning piece of emergency management for when we have events like this here in Orange. Also, another little fun fact about Orange County, we're also home to James Madison's Montpelier, and James Madison being the 4th president of the United States. So that's about 5 miles from my office, which is not a bad thing to have in your backyard. So the 911 Center, as it stands today, we have 5 fire departments that all volunteer. We also have 3 law enforcement agencies and 3 EMS agencies. EMS agencies are actually career staffed, and then we have 1 volunteer agency. But again, that helps supplement the career staff. Our career staff run 24/7, 365, with the fire departments being volunteer the rest of the time. And then, like we said, we have our county sheriff's office, our town of Orange PD, and our town of Gordonsville PD, making up the 3 law enforcement agencies. In 2011, Orange County became the first county in Virginia to actually start deploying some of the Rave 911 suite equipment. Our first was with the Smart 911 product. And we installed that in 2011. And just recently in 2017, we brought on Rave Alert. So here in the 911 Center, we use Rave Alert. We use the 911 suite, which is for us, the Smart 911 and the facilities. We're also in discussions too about bringing the panic button into the schools here in Orange County. So we're a big fan of the Rave products, as you can see from all the stuff that we use. So we're also in the process of consolidating our two centers. Currently, right now, our Sheriff's Office dispatch and our 911 dispatch center are in two separate locations. And actually, as of November 1st, 2017, last Wednesday, both centers now actually fall under the 911 center. So physically, we're in separate facilities, and in about 6 to 8 weeks, we will hopefully be in one facility. So that staffing slide is actually already out of date because of what we've just changed in the last week. But prior to that, the 911 staff was 10 full-time with two part-time. Our Sheriff's Office have 7 full-time staff. Minimum in the 911 center is 2 per shift, and the same at the Sheriff's Office is 2 per shift. So at the end of the day, it's going to be a full-time staff of 18 with minimum staffing of 4 people. Approximately about 17,000 911 calls a year and about 18,000 calls for service that we actually create. And that doesn't mean that all of those are dispatched. Some of those may be 911 transfers, but we try to log everything that we do. So even if it's a 911 wireless hang-up, we will create a call for service, but not necessarily dispatch. What we're trying to do is actually capture the workload that are on the dispatchers, because a 911 wireless call does require a dispatcher to actually do something. It doesn't always require us to dispatch a unit, but there is actually a workload associated to processing that wireless call for service. So that's what it looks for us. The difference being is that those, I just counted the 911 calls, not the administrative calls also. So we decided to kind of go with the Rave 911 suite, and specifically back in 2011, Rave came out and did a demonstration to a regional PSAP managers group. Virginia is broken down into regions, and our region said, hey, yeah, come to our meeting and show us the product that you have. And the first thing that actually sold me on the Rave tool itself, on the Smart 911 tool, was their ability to plot addresses with more accuracy than what my mapping in an alley system could do. That was the first thing that caught my attention. The next thing was with the Smart 911 profile was actually being able to have citizens load up their profile. I'm sure, like most of you in your CAD systems or in your mapping, that you have those notes that got put in some way, somehow, at some point that you don't know if they're good or not. So is that door code really actually the right door code? When was it last updated? How do you actually validate this information? So we were looking at a way to take this responsibility or this ownership off of the dispatch center and actually put it back onto the citizens. And cool thing about Smart 911 is that every 6 months you have to actually revalidate your profile and say yes or no. Is it actually current? Is it actually up to date? So it was able now to, again, take these records off of the 911 center, and now actually every 6 months we know this information is getting validated. For the public, this was a great way for us to actually interact with the public. If you ever look at a 911 center and you look at public safety dollars, and if you were to look at us as a business investment, we're not a good one. We cost a lot of money to provide services. We need a lot of money to function. Now, the services we provide are life critical and very important, and when you look at that, the life safety part of it justifies the actual business cost to it. But when we were out doing public ed, we wanted a way to be able to connect with our citizens. So when we were going to senior citizens events or going to community events, now we can say, here is this tool, citizens, that we can give you for free. Here is your piece of 911 that you actually own. So we were able to interact with our citizens like that and actually sell it better. Now they have ownership. They actually physically and tangibly own a piece of 911. It's their profile, it's their information, and again, it gives the ownership to them and want to be connected into the 911 center. Now we benefit because now we get door codes, medical information, pictures, and again, we were able to create a positive community relationship that helps us too when we go in front of the board. And right now we asked for $26 million to redo our radio system and build a new building. Now I've got the community support because I've developed that relationship that gives them something tangible as to be part of 911. And they've met us, they've had positive interaction, and they've seen the good that we can do. So now when they're seeing this, is this something they can actually support a little bit better because now they're part of that 911 system? Same when we look at our businesses, which is the facility side of Smart 911 or the Rave 911 suite. Again, we're a very rural community, but we have a lot of landlords. And now when the apartments break a water main pipe and you go back to that list, like, when was this key holder list updated? And do you have the right number? And they've changed cell phones. Again, now we can give this ownership back to these businesses and say, hey, if we've got the right up-to-date information, we're not going to have to break down your door to go in and figure out what's going on. It's a lot cheaper than having to actually replace a door. It allows us to actually interact with more than just 911. We work with our EDA, which is our Economic Development Authority. If they could promote that we have public safety tools to help protect businesses, that's commercial growth that we can bring to our county, which, again, benefits the public because it's a lot easier to tax a commercial growth base than it is actually a citizen. So if we're bringing commercial growth into the county, there's a tax base that we can now use to support these tools. We're also promoting the fact that we want the businesses involved in the safety. You know, if we, again, can create that relationship, that's going to help us in the long run. So we work with our building department also. So we work with our tourism department, we work with our parks and rec. Never in a million years would I have thought that public safety would be interacting the way we are with agencies that have really nothing to do with public safety. But in the long run, they do, because they promote that community outreach that allows us to have and foster better relationships with the actual citizens. Again, the hopes are that when 911 Center needs to ask for something, that we've got the support from the community because we're able to provide such an invaluable service to the businesses and the citizens.
Nikki, can I interrupt for a second?
Absolutely.
I already have. I forgot to mention that if people have questions, everyone's on mute, so you can enter the questions in the GoToWebinar panel on the right. There's a question tab there. Enter your questions there, and we'll get to those either during the webinar or at the conclusion. Sorry for the interruption, Nikki.
Oh no, that's okay. I was thinking the same thing myself. So that's how we reach out to the citizens, but there's also the operational part here in the 911 Center. Rave, the Smart 911 tool, actually allows us to create texting, SMS texting. Now, we also have text to 911 in our center. We use the GEM protocol through the web interface. But what Rave allows us to do is that we can now send a text message to any wireless cell phone. They do not have to have a Smart 911 profile. They don't have to be in our system. We just have to have a phone number, and we can now actually text it. And this has actually changed our protocol for how we handle 911 wireless calls and how we respond to that. Every 911 wireless call that comes into our center used to get 2 phone calls. Now you actually get a text message, and then you get a phone call. And this has allowed the communications officers to respond to these 911 wireless calls, hang-up calls, or missed dials, or pocket dials much more promptly. Like most of us, that 911 wireless call, if we're busy, it sits there until we can get around to calling it back. Now they can actually send the text message and get a text message reply and never have to make that phone call. So it's actually changed completely the way that we do business. If I was to take this tool away, they'd be mighty upset with me. They hate having to make the 2 phone calls. Now they will if they have to, absolutely, but they love the ability. And we're seeing such a higher response rate on the wireless calls. If you're like me, I get a phone number, I don't recognize it, I don't answer it. You get me a text message, I'm probably more likely to respond to that. What we've also been able to do using the actual text messaging itself, and I'm going to brag on my 911 Center, is we actually had 7 lives saved by sending text messages. Now, these people were typically suicidal, overdose, and were not responding to phone calls. And we had done research. We found cell phones off of Facebook, using social media. Family members were able to give us cell phones. Law enforcement had some type of cell phone. And we were able to shoot a text to these people saying, basically, we're here to help. We're here to listen. And we were able to get these people to engage and develop a rapport through a text message conversation. and then finally convinced them enough to dial 911 so we could actually now get an anti-alley and a latitude and a longitude on these people. So for us, those 7 text messages were all suicidal people, overdose people. One lady had actually even taken pills and was driving her car. Another was a soldier suffering from PTSD, was feeling suicidal. So again, it was these text messages, because we wouldn't leave them alone, where they said, your text is why I dialed 911. So that had a tremendous impact from us. We also had another life save. His name is Mr. John Nettles, and he is a close friend of the 911 Center, actually. He still keeps in touch with us today. And his wife had randomly seen the newspaper article about the county doing Smart 911, and she was an RN and decided that she was going to load up all the information that she had about the two of them. And Mr. Nettles was like, yeah, whatever. Well, it turns out that information actually saved his life and shaved 7 minutes off the time that he entered the ER to get to the catheter lab. He had actually gone into full cardiac arrest, and his wife had actually put all the information about the stents that he had in his heart into the public safety profile. The 911 Center was able to get this. We relayed it to the paramedics on scene, who were able to get this information right away. They were then able to relay this to the hospital. So when he showed up at the hospital doors, they were already ahead of the game and had all the information they needed. And that's how we were able to actually shave 7 minutes of, if you've heard of the door to balloon time or the door to cath time, which is tremendous when somebody's in actually cardiac arrest. That was a really big deal. So there's actually a video about that whole thing on the Rave website if you ever want to listen to more of the details. So once we realized that, hey, we really like this tool, what other cool things does Rave actually promote? And we were able to go to one of their conferences that they hold, and we started looking at the Rave Alert product. We had looked at it, and we were like, no, we're good. We have Code Red. We're quite happy with Code Red. But what we found, though, with having Code Red as our mass notification system and then having the Smart 911 is we were confusing a lot of our citizens. We were saying, go here if you want to get text messages about weather, but go here if you want us to know information about you. Very, very confusing and difficult to market, especially in a small rural county. So we decided that this year our contract was up with Code Red, and we decided that we wanted to become a complete Rave user. So we replaced our existing mass notification. As you can see, it's a one-stop registration for safety profile and alerts, which is awesome. I tell you to go to smart911.com, and it's one-stop shopping. And you can opt in to the pieces that you want and share information that you want to share. Rave was absolutely phenomenal. I'll take the hit on this one. I screwed up the contract deadline and when some stuff was due, and I called Rave and I said, hey, I made a major mistake. I need Rave Alert turned on, not by the end of the month, but in 2 weeks. And lo and behold, they had it done in days, which I can't say enough for Rave, especially it was my mistake. We're still testing, we're still learning the system, but we have found, we have actually had to use it, and we have found it is very, very simple for the user to use. It didn't take much training or anything like that. We use it to post to social media. And we just actually did that yesterday. We got a road closure. We were able to just copy and paste that, drop it into our social media template, and within a minute, that email had now been distributed to our social media accounts, so emergency management accounts that we have online with Facebook and Twitter. And it was pretty much copy and paste and hit one button, which is just super fantastic for us to have that simplicity as the user. We're anticipating it using for events. You heard me talk about the horse races in the beginning of this. And one of the things that we actually brought into also was the keyword, which if you've gone to concerts, it says text this word to 11611 for alerts. And we plan on using it the same way too, such as it rained all day Saturday. So now this would have given us the ability to move, say, the buses that were there. Okay, were they in the right parking spot, or were they going to get stuck? Did we need to move them? Now we can update the crowd this way by simply having them text a short code to stay alert with the updates like that. And it now allows law enforcement to be able to communicate with large crowds like that. So we anticipate using that in the near future. There's enough things that we do in the county that we can see a really good need for this. And this is where working with Parks and Recs and our tourism, this is how this pulls into it also too. Again, here's this public safety tool, but now here we can use it in Parks and Recs and tourism as part of some of the emergency management planning that we typically don't always think about. So that's kind of an overview of how we use Rave in our 911 center. We're big fans of it. We're still learning the Rave Alert tool. We had some growing pains on the administration side, but find me a software where there isn't. But Rave has just been absolutely fantastic to work with. I call them, and within minutes some days, it doesn't take long to get a response from them. They've been incredibly patient. They have definitely helped me over my hurdles, and have just been a fantastic company to work with and work for, basically. So are there any questions that I can answer?
Yeah, we've got a couple of questions, Nikki. The first one is what was your biggest challenge of consolidation?
Can I answer that? Can I get back to you in about 4 to 6 weeks? Because we're doing it as we speak, and we're doing a lot of it on the fly. Right now, for me, if I was to answer that question today, it is not that it's been difficult, but taking care of people. We had a plan for operations, we had a plan for the IT, the technical stuff. But not everybody stopped to think about the people, such as pay disparities, what a schedule's going to look like, how's governance going to work. So for that wasn't the most difficult thing. I'll say that was the highest priority thing for me right now. The difficulty right now, though, too, is we have 2 of everything, 2 CAT systems, 2 radio systems, 2 separate buildings, and it's all different. And now just working through the technical piece on how do I make that all one and how's it going to work. So in about 4 weeks, I'll probably have a better answer for you on that question. I apologize.
Thank you. Next question. How many people and facilities do you have signed up for profiles?
That's actually a great question that I don't know the answer to. And they're going to be like, that's a weird question. Why wouldn't you want to know your response rate? One of the things that we stress to our community is we don't have access to the information. We don't want to have access. We have no access. We have no way of looking at that stuff. And I'm quite happy to keep it that way, because that's me making the commitment to the citizens that this information is 100% private, and it does not live within the 911 center, does not reside within the 911 center. I can tell you, though, what we look at, though, tangibly, is the amount of saves that I've had and the impact that I've had and the one-on-one conversations that I've had with people. And when we go to these community groups, Rave is not a foreign word. Smart 911 is no longer foreign in this county. It's actually considered a necessity. So you can get access to that information. Rave will run those reports for you. We don't, though, because that is housed within the Rave. And again, we have made that commitment that we want this information to be, we don't want access to this information. We never will and never have done.
Thank you again. Last question. Who in your organization is authorized to send alerts?
Everyone and anyone. We do have some SOPs that go along with it, but we want the autonomy to be on the dispatchers. We have empowered them enough to make decisions. Now, if any of our fire chiefs, so let me back up. So in the 911 center, anyone can send the message. We want them to absolutely do that. I don't need to be called at 3 o'clock in the morning if they need to send out a message, because they need to be handling the incident, not worrying about calling me as the boss. For public safety, it typically comes from a command officer, but it's not to say that a patrol deputy couldn't call in here and say, hey, can you do a BOLA on a missing child? But normally if if it's going up the command, it's normally a command officer that reaches over to the 911 center. And we do make the public safety provide the whole script. And then once we have the script, that's exactly what we launch. But day-to-day road closures and stuff like that, my dispatchers do it themselves all the time without needing permission. They copy and paste the notices that we get from the Department of Transportation, or if they know about it. We've given them that autonomy. We do a lot of training so they know when it's right and when they should. But if they ever have a question, though, then we say, hey, call the supervisor, call the 911 director. But if an officer needs anything, a firefighter needs anything, we're not here to question anyone's judgment. We're here to get the message out, and we'll deal with things later. But we've never had an issue we've never had an issue in the 6 years that I've been here of sending an incorrect message out.
Great. There's one question that I think I might be able to answer. Is Rave Alert a standalone product, or is the 911 suite required? Rave Alert is in fact a standalone product, and it's used in thousands of institutions around the country, educational, state and local, and business. So yeah, you don't need Rave 911 suite. And with that, I think that's the end of the questions. First of all, I would like to thank everyone who attended this webinar for taking time out of your day to do so. And just as importantly, I would like to thank Nikki for taking the time and providing such positive energy and feedback about her experiences with Rave. And with that, I want to thank you and enjoy the rest of your day.